Hey guys, welcome back. It's Jess here. In today's video, I'm going to be finishing my sketchbook and showing you guys the whole process. With the few pages left, I decided to finish strong with, yes, a challenge. And after completing the 100 heads challenge, I really felt that I improved and I got to experiment. So in this video, I decided to do the 100 hands challenge, and I did this in 3 days. So let's begin, shall we? So as I mentioned before, I decided to do this challenge to finish my sketchbook strong with 100 hands. After doing the heads challenge, I felt that it was probably one of the greatest ways to improve. And we all know that hands can be a bit tricky and hard to draw, so I decided to tackle this and have it be a way to finish my sketchbook. I'm always looking for ways to challenge myself, to improve, and setting goals, so this was a great opportunity and I wanted to bring you guys along on the journey. So here we are, and I'm starting off with all the hands, basically some from observation from my own hand and some from references that I found on Unsplash and Pinterest as well. I only used a few pictures just to get a different variety rather than my own hand, but later on you guys see that I end up taking my own references and using them while I draw. And as you guys know from my other videos, I'm a big believer in drawing from life and using your own references. And I'm also a big believer on setting some goals and making sure that you are striving to improve. So with this challenge for myself, I wanted to, again, touch on different mediums and also focus really on the form. Hands are not easy, and by all means, they should be practiced, probably 500 of them, but I really enjoyed the 100 count, so I decided to do that. And here, my hand got really tired, so I just kept drawing and using my blending stump, first starting off with a pencil and then moving on to some fun different mediums. I realized that I was feeling a bit rusty when I was starting, but I was super ambitious and ready to take on this challenge, so that didn't stop me whatsoever. And if you guys are trying out any challenges, I really recommend noticing how you feel and not letting that intimidate you, and just keep striving forward, because this is why we're doing it. We're doing it to improve and get better and try something new. And off the bat, when I started, I was having so much fun because this was something that I haven't practiced in a while, and hands are super interesting and very cool, so I decided that I'm gonna make the best out of it. Now, while I was drawing, I was really focusing on getting the proper values and lighting, because that is what makes up our form. I'm using the blending stump to put in general values and shapes as a whole, and then I'm actually using my pencil to add in some details. And of course, you know me, I have to have some mixed media inside my drawings, so I added some watercolor as a background and then went back in with my pencil to unify it all together. So overall, while I'm creating my sketchbook pages, I'm constantly thinking about composition and the way that I can bring everything actually all together. I'm thinking of both pages as one, since I believe everything should always be connected. And on the long lines of that, I always want to bring in some fun different mediums to make sure that I am experimenting and having fun with it. I started off with pencils because I always feel like it's a safe choice, and I really enjoy doing black and white studies. It helps me see, it helps me get the shapes in. And once I've tried a few, about 10, I bring in some watercolors and I start to experiment with that. Here, I was actually picking random colors to do the backgrounds in watercolor, and overall, when you guys see the finished spread, it ended up working together so well, and sometimes accidents happen like that. So try different colors, try different mediums, and you will actually surprise yourself. So I thought of this first spread as like me dipping my toes in the water. I was getting warmed up. I was getting ready to take on this 100 hands challenge. But since I actually did the 100 heads challenge, I felt like I was knowing what to expect and how much workload it'll be. And I was totally ready for it. And believe it or not, I was actually really excited. I've been wanting to do the hands challenge for quite a while now. And once I began, I gained this momentum and the compositions began to work together. I played with size and I played with color. Eventually, intuitively, your mind and hand kind of tells you what to do and what colors to choose. But the important thing was just to start, get going, and have fun with it. And before I knew it, the first 14 were done. Now, once I finished the first spread, I had a light bulb moment where I was like, oh my god, I have the greatest idea. Why don't I practice hands and learn sign language at the same time? And so I decided to mark off my paper, take my own reference of my hands while I was learning the sign language of the whole alphabet and put it in one spread. I made sure to get some good lighting, and here's a little bit of some behind the scenes action for you guys on how I did my photos. So I made sure that I laid out all of the hands evenly across the spread so that I have room for all 26. And I have to say, this was definitely like an aha moment. Well, once you get the pencil moving, ideas just start popping in your head. And I wasn't sure to ink it in ballpoint pen or gel pen, and I asked you guys on Instagram and I got a really big win for the ballpoint pen. And I still decided to try it out on a small piece of paper to see how it would look. And I honestly loved both, so I did incorporate the ink in a later spread, so you guys will see. So I actually put up the reference for you guys to see on the top, and I was going in with a lot of cross-hatching while I was doing the ballpoint pen work, and it was a lot of fun. It was super, super interesting, and I was learning at the same time, so yeah, it was great. I did zoom in for a better view, but these hands are actually mini, maybe 2 inches each. So going back to my goals, I was playing around with sizes and different shapes, and here I even got to play around with typography, so it was fun to actually get the letters in and learn the sign language as well. And I also want to point out to you guys that you really don't need any special fancy art supplies to practice. I'm just using a regular Bic ballpoint pen. Just a simple office supply or a pencil is enough to practice and get your hand moving. And I absolutely love drawing with ballpoint pens because it's kind of like using a pencil, but it's a little bit more daring because it's ink and you can cross-hatch with it. It looks really realistic, it lets you layer, and it's a really beautiful finish. So if you haven't tried this out yet, I definitely recommend. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about my technique for ballpoint pens. And what I basically start with is shading one way. So I would start with going up and down motions, and once I get all the values as one, I would actually cross-hatch the other way. So opposite, perpendicular, straight to that first cross-hatch, and then I would go in a diagonal direction. So I would build up the values, and to create a little bit more style, I would add a darker outline in certain areas where I saw more shadows in the hand. And I made sure that I had 3 values present at all times: a really dark shadow, a medium tone, and a highlight. I also made sure that I had shading going in the direction that the hand is turning to make sure that the form looks 3D and super realistic. And personally, I really like to add a realistic feel to it, but I also enjoy stylizing and putting my own little twist to it. And as I was drawing all the hands, I did lose track of time and I ended up spending lots of time on it, but I tried my best to add some sort of timer. So this is what I'm doing here. I'll show you guys my setup. I would have my reference right next to me and I'd make sure that I'm staying on time because otherwise I would be doing this all day for the next 2 weeks and then it would take me forever to get the video to you guys. So I just made sure that I was staying on track, and I really recommend putting a timer because I guess this was part of my goal to make sure that I finish it in 5 minutes. I realized that with this challenge over time, I was able to draw quicker, I was able to make better decisions with my line work, and although I do draw every day, it helped me even more with my skill. And I'm so happy that I did it and chose to do the sign language as well because I got to learn another skill. I also shared them with you guys and you guys seem to love them on Instagram, so hopefully I can get a print of these. So let me know if that's something that you would like. So as I was finishing up the sign language alphabet, I tried to make sure that all of them look cohesive. I wanted to create the similar line work from all of them to make sure that they all serve together as a group. I ended up feeling very confident about drawing hands after this second spread. And once I started to do the touch-ups, I took a step back and looked at them as a whole, and I was loving it so much. I was jumping around my room excited. And here is the final finish of them. Alrighty, moving on to the next spread. I couldn't leave the people hanging who voted for the gel pens, obviously, so I decided to go through the numbers from 1 to 10 and I decided to ink these in the gel pen. Similar with the last spread, I'm just laying out an interesting composition to make sure that all the hands will fit in as a spread, and then I begin to ink. So I decided to do a navy color for all the odd numbers and a black color for all the even numbers. And a little fun fact, I didn't know that the first 5 numbers are shown facing palm in. So whenever you're doing sign language, I read that the first 5 are shown palm facing in and the rest are shown palm facing out. Which again was great practice and a great thing to learn because I got to do hands in positions facing in and then hands in positions facing out from numbers 6 through 10. And the whole process of drawing, of taking references and learning was super fun, and I really enjoyed this and felt that it was a great decision. So once I switched over to my gel pen, and I'm using the Muji gel pen, and whenever you switch over to a different medium, you have to switch your gears a bit and your technique. But I really liked doing the cross hatches, so I wanted to incorporate that with the gel pen as well. So I was consciously thinking about that in my head to keep a cohesive look with the spreads and make sure that I'm shading in one direction first and layering on in the second and third layers. I feel like cross-hatching is my constant go-to. I almost do it subconsciously now. It's like a natural action because I've been practicing it for a while, but I love the way that it looks and it's also super therapeutic. All right, moving on. So for this next spread, you guys are thinking, what is she gonna think of next? What's gonna happen now? Well, the previous spreads I felt were really black and white heavy, which is awesome, but I was feeling like I need some color in my life. So I grabbed some markers that I found, and some of them were Crayola and some of them were a new brand that I was doing some home decor shopping in Marshall's and found this brand, I think it's called King Art. So I figured I'd give them a try. I was focusing on analogous color schemes, which if you're not familiar with what that means, it's basically all the colors that are positioned next to each other on the color wheel. So I started with yellow, orange, and red, then I moved on to green, light green, and blue, and so on. For this spread, I wanted to create something fun and colorful and have the hands kind of like interacting with one another with all these like little shapes, and all of this was basically coming to me as I was going. I was just having fun with it and enjoying the process. I also wanted to see what it's like to focus on strictly just the shadow shapes and getting those in with the markers, and then going in with a darker color to try to create some more shadow work. So that's kind of what I was focusing on with these markers. I also didn't use markers too much in the 100 heads challenge, so I decided to play around with some here. I also basically set a medium tone for all the midtones, and the darker shadow of the color, basically if I would have a darker purple, would serve as the shadows, and I made sure to also leave a highlight to create some form. And of course, as always, make sure everything is connected. So once I was finishing with the markers, I was feeling like the white spaces were a bit empty, so I took some watercolor and I added a very slight little flow to combine all of the shapes together. I did this in some of my previous videos, and I find it's a great way to bring it all together. Okay, so for the next spread, I decided to practice some watercolor without drawing with the pencil, and I wanted to create all of the shapes while timing myself approximately 5 to 10 minutes. For this challenge, I put myself on the spot and made sure that I challenged myself time-wise, since I know I can get carried away and draw for hours and hours on end. I also used a limited color palette with my watercolors and made sure that I included a background as well. I love creating a flowy background with the watercolors because it creates an interesting texture and just the way that it flows out, and the fact that I can't control what the water does and how it goes on the paper makes it that much more interesting. And as I was drawing, I was realizing that I wanted to focus on the form and think of the hand as shapes. So I went back to my pencil and reassessed the way I thought about the hand. Once I thought about it as building blocks and even all of the parts of the fingers that are separating as shapes, I felt like I was succeeding with the hand more. And one general tip that I find works really well is to think of anything you're drawing in shapes. Applying that to what you're drawing really helps you see differently, and it improves the way you actually build the form and build your actual subject. So for these next few, I actually took the watercolor and tried to create a gradient going from yellow to red. So I had the gradient going in the hand, and then I went back in with the red and did the details there. So I was just playing around with different compositions and finding ways on trying something new and really pushing myself to do something that I haven't done before. And looking at it with a fresh eye, these three came out like little flame hands, and I really liked how they came out. So as I'm approaching number 65, this is the part of the challenge where usually everybody gets a bit tired, and I do agree at like number 65, you're ready to throw in the towel, but this is the part where you really should drive forward and try to make the best of the best. Alright, so moving on to the next spread, and if you're still watching, thank you so much for still being here. I decided to focus on the mudras, and I wanted to look at how the different hand shapes can maybe serve as its own little statue that I wanted to crosshatch using the Cold Erase Prismacolor pencils. I did a spread in my 100 heads challenge using the Tuscan red color and the green, and in this spread I decided to use the Tuscan red as well because I love how the color looks when you do any drawing. This is the pencil that I feel like makes everybody's art looks good. So I use this pencil to create these statue-like figured hands and to create a nice cross-hatching while learning the different gestures of the hands that they can actually mean and symbolize. I love creating some sort of concept or meaning into my work, and that's why I decided to bring some sort of fun and symbolism into this project, and especially the challenge where I can learn how to draw the hands and learn something new. And not only am I learning something new, you guys are learning along with me. So in that case, it's a win and win and everybody's happy. So with the same thing that I did with the ink, I'm applying this with my pencil drawings for these hands, and I actually felt that practicing those with the inks made me more neat and consistent with my pencil work here. I was able to figure out what direction to put my lines, and things began to be a little bit more clear. It all comes with practicing and actually putting in the work and consciously making yourself improve. And I like to say, be your own judge. Look back at your work, look at what you like and what you don't like. Incorporate your strengths into different mediums or maybe into a different concept and try out different things. There's always something that you can do that can improve and get better. Alright, moving on to the next spread, I decided to incorporate an object into the trick. I guess I was really feeling ballpoint pens in this moment, and I took a red ballpoint pen to make sure I have some color, and my kneadable eraser, which I moved into a circle or sphere shape so that I have a reference of holding something. If you ever want to complicate something or challenge yourself even more, I really recommend to grab another object and hold it, because that's going to give you some more context and it's going to create more shadows and actually challenge you to see. For me, I always look for a little bit more of a challenge because that's what I feel helps me improve. So therefore, I took just a shape and held it to just try something different with this exercise. Sometimes our brain can get a little bit confused when we add something to it. And especially when you're drawing, if you're holding something, you can be super awesome at drawing the hands, but once you have an object added to it, you're thrown off and you have to actually challenge yourself a little bit more to see. And this way, you're really getting better. So the more variety you give yourself and the more challenges you throw at yourself, the better it is for you. So a quick little story time about what made me think about holding something and drawing it was, remember my sketch with me video where I had the Q&A? I spoke about going to art school, and one of the art tests to get into the school was actually to draw your hand with a crumpled paper. So you would have to crumple a piece of paper in your hand and then draw it. And whether or not you would score a high score would determine if you would get into the school or not. And that was only one part of the test. So this kind of reminded me of the time when I had to take the test, and it's actually a really great exercise. So if you haven't tried holding something and drawing it, I really recommend. I was also looking at master artists like Sargent and any artists from the Renaissance to see how they would draw their hands because they're so beautifully painted, and I wanted to see how they do their brushstrokes and what they did to help me improve my art. But as I was coming to a close with this spread, and this was almost approaching number 86, 87, I was super happy with it, and the three colors really came together. Alright, moving on to the last three spreads. We're almost there, guys. I decided to grab some acrylic gouache and try something different, try a little color scheme. I got my color wheel book out where I looked at the different kinds of color schemes, and I decided to paint some hands using just those three colors. I decided to play around with solid shapes, pastel colors, and also really bold, dark colors as well. I also haven't used the acrylic gouache that much, but I was really excited to try it out and try and paint with it since I love using acrylic and I love using gouache, so I figured why not? And I was really surprised with how things came out because I was even thinking these would work really well as stickers. So let me know what you guys think about these. But as you guys could see, I'm just blocking in the whole hand as one shape and then coming in with one color in the next round and again with another color in the following round. One really good tip from me, guys, is to limit your colors and find a color palette that you really like and just try to make something with it. The less colors, the better, and you're gonna see how cool it comes out. I particularly love practicing with blue and painting with just blues and whites and looking at the different shades of blues. I don't know what it is, but I love blue and it's just, it just makes you feel good, So I really recommend to pick a color that makes you feel good and just paint with it. Try just using that color and see what happens. Alright, so for these last two spreads, I only had a few hands remaining, so I decided to try pairs. I wanted to see how I could deal with two hands actually interacting with one another and linking. So here I did two pinkies and like a little pinky promise kind of situation, and I really enjoyed painting these in a limited color palette. I just used yellow, red, and this Viridian green. And I created two compositions of two hands meeting one another. One I did the pinkies and another I did a handshake. I used gouache for these and I included a similar composition in one that I had in one of my videos of the 5 ways to fill your sketchbook, where you paint two compositions on top of one another, and I really enjoyed it because you get two little finished mini paintings. For the page beside them, I decided to go in with my Lamy pen. The fountain pen is super fun to draw with, and I do think that it changes the way that you hold the pen and it comes a little bit more loose and it's just a little bit more spontaneous. And I realized that I haven't even touched it during the whole challenge, and I was like, oh no, he feels left out. So I had to use this pen, and my main focus was just to keep it loose. Alright, the last two hands are upon us, and these are the last 2 pages in my sketchbook, and I was super excited to finish, but I was also nostalgic because this sketchbook is probably one of my favorites, so stay tuned for a sketchbook tour. But with the last 2, I really wanted to finish strong with 2 acrylic paintings, and I did one hand of an older man, which I wanted to create more variety, and I did it in grayscale, just using black and white in order for me to really see. I love to practice in black and white. And the next hand, to celebrate hand number 100 and the last page of my sketchbook, I decided to do a finished illustration with a beautiful feel to it. And although I did an acrylic base, I decided to go in with ballpoint pen, and I realized it actually glides so nicely on the paper, and it was super satisfying. I did this as a sentimental memory and a special thanks to my hand that actually helps me create. So here we are, 99 and 100, all done and feeling super happy and super proud. And yes, we've come to the end. It's time for the final flip through, so I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you so much for watching and sticking around. Okay guys, and that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below which one of these spreads you enjoyed the most. I hope you guys tune in to the finished sketchbook tour coming up, and I'll see you there. Bye!